Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all our witnesses for your testimony today. Having said that, I'm getting more and more depressed with what I'm hearing. Certainly, you've outlined many of the challenges, many of the problems. Perhaps I'll start with you, Dr. Vincent. You talked about research priorities, and you also hinted at solutions. Could you give us some concrete examples of where a problem was obviously observed, and we now have some success in addressing that particular situation?
Well, thank you very much for that question. And I think we should try to avoid depression. And I think we should take a leaf out of the Indigenous book, and because when you talk to northern communities, they are very positive. And they explain that they have been through extraordinary changes the last 200 years and have an incredible resilience. And we can learn from that. We can learn from them. I think there are many examples where we have solutions. In my own centre, the Centre for Northern Studies, you talked earlier in the proceedings with Professor Michel Allard. He started with some very basic research on using medical technologies to examine soil and permafrost. Very theoretical, working in remote areas.
I'm hitting pause because it looks like the bells are ringing. Oh. So do I have the committee's consent to continue during the ringing of the bells? Yes. Is that okay?
I'm just going to say, we'll check.
Yeah, let's see. I don't know either.
We're all running up the stairs, right?
Yeah. Do we want to turn on the screen and see what's going on there? But then we can keep an eye on things.
You can go ahead.
Okay. Okay. We'll continue. I stopped your time, so we'll continue. Thank you.
Very good at multitasking. Yeah, thank you very much. So the example I had was my colleague Michel Allard applied actually CT scans to permafrost. And that was very theoretical. And then the mayor of Salouet came to him and said, we have a terrible problem up in the north of Quebec. The land is falling apart. We've had to move 20 of our buildings. We may have to move the entire town of Salouet. Well, we can't afford to do that. Of course, culturally, that would be a terrible thing to do. And it would break the Bank of Canada to move all Inuit communities. So he worked with the CT technique to examine ice within the permafrost to identify, and worked very closely with the Inuit community to identify traditional lands that would be culturally of interest for further development, and developed a risk map for future climate change, such that that community can now build for the future, knowing that in the decades ahead, they are on the most stable ground in that particular area.
Thank you so much. Maybe I'll turn to Dr. Kutz. You've told us about the disappearing muskox population due to Arctic warming. What have you come up with in terms of, other than observation, in terms of ensuring that food supply going forward? Are there solutions that you've come up with?
Thank you. I would echo Warwick's comments about the Inuit being so very resilient and being able to switch from species to species depending on season, etc. However, they are in a food security crisis nowadays because multiple species are declining. Some of the way that we've been working towards solutions, one piece is just knowledge. If people understand what to look for in animals, if the meat is safe, there will be far less wastage. So right now, communities hear about mad cow disease, they hear about bird flu, which creates a lot of uncertainty about their food source and distrust in it, which can lead to them going to the grocery store instead. As we learn more about what's in the species, whether or not it is a risk for people for consumption, that can increase their confidence in country foods. The other piece of what we're doing is very much technologically driven, and that is in looking at emerging infectious diseases in the Arctic, being able to provide rapid tests, not unlike a COVID test, for food safety. So at this point in time, when people find something unusual, it's a long trip for that sample to get down to a lab in the south and for the answer to come back to that community. But if we can develop, and we have the molecular technologies to do these things, when we develop these tests, and we can then provide a rapid response to people and support them in their food choices. So that alone will help prevent wastage of meat, unnecessary harvest, etc.
Thank you. That's quite reassuring. Thank you so much for that. We've heard about the issue of increased shipping through the Arctic, and I'm wondering again how people are researching that. What specifically are the problems related to the human population within the Arctic from the increased shipping that is occurring? Perhaps Dr. Vincent.
Actually, I've had the pleasure of working with a international lawyer on that question, relevant to related to Arctic shipping in Canada, and there is a long list. There are a long list of issues to consider. Of course, the greatest concern is oil spills. Given the danger of and uncharted territory in many parts of the Arctic, we have very poor charts, bathymetric charts in many areas. The ice is changing very rapidly. It's a lot less predictable than it was in the past. And we need to understand more about what happens if there is an oil spill. How fast will that degrade and break down? So there's research going on, including with local Inuit communities, trying to understand response times and recovery times of the ecosystem to oil spills. And the results to date indicate that there will be a very persistent effect of any spill of that sort. But there are other questions also that relate to, for example, underwater noise in shipping. The Arctic Ocean is a very quiet place because of that ice cap.
That's our time.
Thank you.
Could expand on that in a written answer if you choose to. So thank you very much.